The rain painted the windows of the top floor in soft gray streaks, a quiet reminder that the world outside kept moving even when yours stopped. Inside Whitmore Tower, Clara Whitmore stood alone in her office, an open cathedral of glass marble and curated silence. Downtown Seattle shimmered below its lights, scattered across wet pavement like broken promises. A tablet blinked on the edge of her mahogany desk, notifications piling in. She didn't check them. She already knew what they said. The deal was unraveling. Whitmore Technologies. The company she'd built from a second-hand laptop in her sister's basement was now hemorrhaging data. Critical systems down. Files gone. An internal failure or something worse just hours before a billion-dollar acquisition. She tapped her nails against the tablet screen. Once that rhythmic sound comforted her. It meant control. Today it meant time slipping through her fingers. Angela had tried to warn her. Earlier that afternoon, her longtime assistant had stepped into the office with concern etched across her face. "You've been pushing too hard, Clara," she'd said, offering tea Clara never touched. "Even machines break down. People break down harder." Clara had nodded politely, then dismissed her. She didn't need concern. She needed results. But now the systems were silent. The control rooms were empty. The engineers were gone, sent home when the emergency alerts became too frequent to explain. Clara had insisted she'd handle it, that she needed the space. She hadn't expected the silence to feel this loud. A single lamp on the desk illuminated her reflection in the glass, sharp blazer sleek bun, perfect makeup, untouched by the hours. The kind of woman who never broke, the kind of woman people envied. So why did she feel like she was unraveling? Behind her a soft sound broke the stillness, a slow, steady rhythm of wheels against polished floors. She didn't turn. It was late. Only the janitorial team remained. They were invisible at this hour. That was the point. But the sound stopped at her door. Clara exhaled through her nose and turned, expecting to see someone apologizing and backing away. Instead, a man stood there calmly, his hand resting on a cleaning cart. He looked mid-40s with thick, dark hair just beginning to gray, and eyes that met hers without flinching. His uniform was crisp, but worn name tag hanging slightly crooked. Raymond D. He didn't speak. Clara lifted her chin. "Everything's fine. Just a long night." His eyes moved briefly to the screen behind her, still flashing red with system errors. "If that's what fine looks like," he said, "I hope I never get promoted." Clara blinked. She wasn't used to being joked with, especially not by staff. She leaned back against her desk. "That wasn't in your job description." Neither was watching someone stare at a screen like it's the end of the world. A beat of silence. Then Clara said, "You know what you're looking at?" Ray shrugged. "I used to, before life took a left turn." She tilted her head. "Used to how I was in cybersecurity. Systems architecture, specialized in breach response. I stopped about 7 years ago." Clara's skepticism was instinctual. "And now you mop the floors at a tech company." He gave a half smile. "I like clean starts." Clara studied him. He didn't fidget, didn't over-explain. He didn't ask for anything. And for reasons she couldn't fully name, that made her listen harder. Her voice softened just slightly. "You really think you could help?" He looked past her at the screen, the blinking red lines of corrupted data. "You have isolated network logs and mirrored servers." "Yes," she replied, wary now. "Then I can try." Another silence stretched between them. Clara's pride and exhaustion did battle behind her eyes. Then she stepped aside. Ray rolled the cart against the wall and stepped into her office. No fanfare, no hesitation. He sat at her terminal and began typing. Clara crossed her arms and watched. His fingers moved fast, deliberate. Not like someone pretending, like someone who'd done this before 100 times in real-life storms. Raymond, she said, unsure why she suddenly needed to fill the silence. "Is that your first name, Ray?" He answered, eyes on the screen. "You're not afraid?" He paused just briefly. "Of what?" Trying Clara didn't reply. Behind her, the Seattle skyline stretched like a painting in motion. A siren moaned far off. The city didn't care that Clara Whitmore, the woman who never failed, was watching everything she built fall apart. "I used to believe that failure was for other people," she said quietly. Ray said nothing. She continued. "When I started this company, I told myself I'd never stop moving, that if I just kept pushing, I'd outrun everything." "Did you?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "Turns out you can outrun people. You can't outrun yourself." Ray nodded like he understood something she hadn't said aloud. Most things break before they bend. The screens behind him flickered. One of the data logs turned from red to yellow. Clara straightened. "What did you just do?" "Rerouted the backup index. Your data's not gone, it was masked. You were being redirected to a null node. Whoever set this up wanted it to look like a wipe." Clara felt her heart thud in her chest. "So we didn't lose it all?" "Not yet," he said. "But whoever did this, they knew your system. Intimately." Her stomach sank. "Can you trace it?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the code like someone reading a map in a language only they could understand. "I can try," he said at last. "But I'll need access." "Full access." Clara hesitated. That kind of trust wasn't something she handed out. Not to strangers. Not to anyone. But something in Ray's voice, unshaken, real, tilted her forward. She walked to the desk, unlocked a secure terminal, and handed him a device. "You have it." Ray met her eyes for the first time since he sat down. "Then I'll make it count." Clara turned and walked to the window, watching the rain thicken against the glass. She didn't know who this man really was, or how he'd ended up here. But as the monitors behind her began to shift, one green then another, she realized something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope? Not because the data was coming back, but because someone had chosen to try, someone who wasn't supposed to matter, someone who just might save everything. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The server room was always cold, but tonight it felt colder. Ray stood between rows of blinking machines, fingers gliding over the keyboard, his eyes locked on cascading lines of code. Clara stood nearby, arms crossed tight, as if holding herself together. She wasn't used to watching other people take the wheel, not in her company, not in her life. But she also wasn't used to losing. "You're quiet," Ray said, not turning. "I'm watching," Clara replied. "You don't trust me. I don't know you." Ray's lips tugged into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's fair." A moment passed. Then another. One of the terminal lights flickered. Ray paused, adjusted the script, and resumed typing. Clara's gaze traveled across his profile, calm, focused, unhurried. He moved like someone who didn't need to prove anything, which made her wonder what he'd lost that made him that way. "Where did you learn all this?" she asked softly. "Started in the military, cyber division, moved to private sector. I worked for a firm in Denver, high-level breach mitigation, long hours, tight teams, big wins." He stopped typing for a second. "Then my wife got sick. Everything changed." Clara stayed still, her voice lower now. "I'm sorry." Ray nodded once. "Me too." The server beeped, interrupting the silence. Ray leaned forward, fingers tapping with a little more urgency now. Clara stepped closer, watching the screen blink from diagnostic gray to steady green. Her breath caught. "You're reversing the breach," she said, barely believing it. "I'm starting to. But this wasn't just a fluke or a random attack. Someone wanted this company to bleed." Her chest tightened. "You think it was internal?" Ray didn't answer right away. The breach was too precise. Whoever did this knew your architecture, your fail-safes, your timing. Clara's voice thinned. "The acquisition is in less than 36 hours. If they tank our value, the deal collapses. Everything collapses." Ray finally looked at her. "Then we don't let them win." The words hung in the air like a promise, or maybe a challenge. Clara studied him. He wasn't saying it to impress her. He wasn't saying it to get something. He meant it. The lights above them buzzed faintly. One of the cooling fans whirred into high gear. Clara looked at the room. The walls of servers that once made her feel powerful now suddenly felt fragile. "I built this company after losing someone too," she said quietly. Ray looked at her but didn't push. My sister Clara continued. "She overdosed the year I founded Whitmore. I missed her last call because I was flying to Tokyo to close a funding round. I told myself I was doing it for both of us. That success would make it matter." Ray's expression softened. "Did it?" Clara hesitated. "It used to." The server pinged again. Data began scrolling across the screen file, names, logs, timestamps. Ray leaned in. "There. That's the thread. A false administrator account. Looks like it was routed through a local shell access. Someone inside." Clara's voice cracked just slightly. "Can you trace it? I can try. But I'll need time." She nodded. "Take it." He turned back to the screen, focused again. Clara walked a few steps back, pacing slowly between the server racks. Her heels echoed in the empty space. "You have a daughter, right?" she asked suddenly. Ray glanced up. "Isla. 8. Smarter than me and knows it." Clara smiled for the first time in hours. "She sounds like a handful. She's the reason I'm still standing." "Why didn't you go back to cybersecurity?" After your wife, Ray paused, like the question cut deeper than she intended. "I tried," he said. "But tech moves fast. 3 years away felt like 30. My resume didn't matter. My name didn't matter. All they saw was a gap, and a man with a kid who might need time off." Clara swallowed. "So you became a janitor. It let me be close to Isla, paid the bills, gave me peace even if it wasn't purpose." The lights flickered again, this time brighter. The system was stabilizing. Clara stepped closer, her reflection mirrored in the glass panel beside them. "You don't miss it. The work, I mean." Ray nodded slowly. "Every day." "Then why not try again?" He met her eyes. "Because I already missed too much." The room fell silent. The hum of machines became the only sound. "You're not what I expected," Clara said after a beat. "I get that a lot," Ray replied with a quiet smile. "You walk in with a mop and walk out saving a company. That's not exactly common." Ray's smile faded into something more thoughtful. "Neither is a billionaire CEO standing in a freezing server room asking real questions." She looked away, embarrassed by how close that came to something intimate. A chime interrupted them. Ray's script completed. A third of the data was restored. Clara exhaled slowly. "That's incredible. It's a start." "You know this will get out," she said. "People will ask why a janitor knew more than my engineers." "Let them ask." Clara turned to face him fully. "I'll have to explain you." Ray shrugged. "Then explain me. Or don't." She studied him. His calm. His stillness, the quiet strength beneath the surface. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was managing someone. She felt like she was meeting someone. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights stretched into the distance, reflecting off the wet streets like veins of light. Ray packed up the temporary workstation and stood. "I'll be back at 7. Clara tilted her head. "You're not staying. I promised Isla pancakes in the morning. I won't break that for anyone." She didn't try to stop him. As he walked out pushing the cart with quiet wheels, Clara watched the door slowly close behind him. And for a reason she couldn't quite name, she didn't feel so alone anymore. Clara stared at the empty doorway long after Ray had gone, the hum of the server room now sharper in his absence. For a moment she didn't know what to do with the stillness. The silence wasn't just physical, it pressed in around her heavy with thoughts she didn't want to name. It was nearly 2:00 a.m. She made her way back to her office, her heels echoing through the quiet halls like questions. The building that usually pulsed with light and energy during the day now felt hollow, almost haunted. She sank into the leather chair behind her desk, the same place she'd signed million-dollar contracts, terminated executives, and reshaped the future with a few sentences. Tonight she couldn't even shape her own thoughts. The screen in front of her showed progress. Ray's temporary restore system was still running, recovering fragments of what she thought had been lost forever. She should have felt relief, gratitude. Instead, she felt shaken, not just by the breach or the risk to the company, but by Ray, by how calmly he'd walked in stripped of titles and offered more clarity than her entire executive team had managed in days, and by how he'd left. No pitch, no angle, no expectation, just pancakes and his daughter. The elevator chimed. Clara looked up instinctively, but it wasn't Ray. Sam Boone stepped into the office, holding 2 paper cups from the cafe down the block. Her sleek trench coat was spotless hair pinned into its usual perfect twist. She looked like she hadn't lost a minute of sleep, which only made Clara more aware of the bags forming under her own eyes. "I figured you'd still be here," Sam said, setting a cup on the desk. "Chamomile." Clara accepted it, surprised. "Thanks." Sam sat down across from her, crossing her legs and leaning back. "Word's getting around. Tech team said you called off the engineers." Clara nodded. "I needed the noise gone. And the..." Janitor stayed there it was. Clara's eyes lifted to meet Sam's. "His name is Ray." Sam smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Clara, I know you. When you start trusting people too fast, it usually means you're tired." "I'm not trusting him," Clara said carefully. "I'm watching him." Sam sipped her tea. "Because from the outside, it's starting to look like he's in control of the recovery." "And that's not a great look." Clara leaned back in her chair, voice cooler now. "He's the only one who could trace the access point. And he's already reversed 1/3 of the breach." Sam didn't blink. "You don't find it convenient." "What are you implying? I'm not. I'm just saying people don't always show up without a reason. And if someone knew enough about our systems to hack them, maybe they knew enough to play hero too." The words landed harder than Clara expected. Sam's gaze softened just slightly. "Clara, I'm not trying to undermine you. I'm protecting the company, and I'm protecting you." Clara's throat tightened. "I didn't ask for protection." "No, but you built something worth protecting." They sat in silence, the only sound the distant hum of the servers below and the quiet rain tapping against the window. Clara looked down at the tea. It had gone lukewarm. "I've known you for 20 years, Sam said more gently. "Since the days you ate ramen at your desk and worked until your voice was gone. You don't let people in. Not easily. So if he's gotten in even a little, just be sure." Clara said nothing. Sam rose, buttoned her coat, and paused at the door. Don't let the first person who shows you kindness be the one who breaks you. Then she was gone. Clara sat for a long time, staring at the cup she hadn't asked for, hearing echoes she hadn't wanted to. At 7:05 a.m., Ray returned. He looked different in daylight, his uniform freshly washed hair damp from the rain eyes, alert but softer. Clara had been expecting him. What she hadn't expected was the small figure trailing beside him. Isla Delgado, bundled in a pink jacket, and rainbow rain boots, peered into the office with wide eyes. Ray gave a quick wave. Sorry. Her sitter texted last minute, sick with the flu. I can bring her with me to the maintenance lounge for a couple hours if that's. Clara stood. No, it's fine. Isla looked up at her, curious and unafraid. Are you the boss? Clara blinked. I am. You don't look scary. Ray chuckled. Don't say that. Clara smiled, caught off guard. I'll take that as a compliment. Ray handed Isla a tablet and some headphones. Just sit over here, okay? No touching wires. And if you need anything, I know, Daddy. He turned back to Clara. Where are we? Clara gestured toward her screen. Your trace finished. It logged 3 suspicious access points, all within the last week. Ray leaned over, eyes scanning. That's not good. I already checked those devices are registered to internal accounts, which means someone's still inside. Clara nodded. Isla looked up from the corner. Are you fixing broken stuff again? Ray glanced back, then turned to Clara. We should move fast. Clara hesitated, then said quietly, Sam thinks you're too convenient. Ray didn't flinch. She's not wrong. I'm convenient because I'm still here when others left. She thinks you might be connected to the breach. And you? Clara held his gaze. I don't know what to think. A pause. Then Ray said, That's fair. He turned back to the screen and resumed his work. The tension in the room stretched, but Clara didn't walk away. Instead, she crossed the room, knelt beside Isla, and tapped the screen gently. What are you watching? A space cartoon. They fix things on the spaceship. Clara smiled. Like your dad? Yeah, Isla said proudly. He can fix anything, except my pancakes. Those are always burned. Clara laughed a real laugh, sharp and sudden, and Isla giggled, leaning into her. In the background, the system pinged again. Ray looked up. Got something. Clara stood. What is it? A ghost login. Not just access someone's copying data. Live. Her breath caught. They're still in the system right now, Ray said. And we just saw them. Clara's eyes narrowed, and for the first time in days, she felt her grip on this story tightening again. She wasn't going to lose. Not this time. Not with Ray watching the walls. And Isla coloring hope in the corners. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Ray's fingers moved like a metronome, controlled, rhythmic, exact. The screen in front of him was no longer blinking red. Now it pulsed with something more dangerous motion. Active data transfer. Someone inside Whitmore Technologies was accessing secured files in real time. Clara stood just behind him, arms crossed tightly. The floor-to-ceiling windows of her office reflected their silhouettes. Her sharp and upright, his hunched over the keyboard tension etched into every line of his back. Can you isolate it? She asked. I can try, but they're good. Whoever it is knows how to hide a footprint. Her voice dipped. But not from you. Ray gave a small nod, eyes still locked on the code. Not if I move fast. A silence settled thick with what they weren't saying. She took a step closer. How long have they been doing this? Ray scrolled, pausing. About 4 days. Quiet transfers. Small batches at first. Nothing major, just enough to map the system. But in the last 24 hours, it's ramped up. Fast, and the files, financials, contracts, internal forecasts. The kind of files you leak if you want investors to panic. Clara's stomach twisted. Ray leaned back, slightly pinching the bridge of his nose. They're not just stealing data. They're sabotaging valuation. Clara exhaled, slow and shallow. They want the acquisition to fall apart, and they want it to look like you lost control. The words cut more than she expected. Not because they surprised her, but because they confirmed what she'd feared since the system first collapsed. Her control was slipping. Isla sat quietly in the corner of the office, headphones on crayons scattered across the coffee table. She was drawing again, oblivious to the weight shifting in the room. Clara glanced at Ray. His jaw was set, his focus unflinching. There was something in his silence, stronger than defiance, softer than pride. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. Ray didn't answer right away. He kept typing, eyes scanning, fingers moving. Then, without looking at her, he said, "Because someone should." She didn't expect that. Not the answer. Not the tone. She stepped toward the window, the early morning light creeping between the clouds, painting the office in muted gold. "People don't usually help me without a reason. That's probably the problem," Ray said gently. Her shoulders stiffened. "Excuse me." He turned, then slowly looking up at her. His voice wasn't sharp, just honest. "You built this place like a fortress. Everything outside the walls, noise, everything inside yours. I'm not judging that, I get it. But when the walls cracked, no one knew how to reach you." Clara's face didn't change, but something in her chest pulled tight. "You think I isolated myself?" "I think you survived," Ray said, voice low. "But surviving doesn't mean living." The words landed with more force than she wanted them to, because deep down she knew they were true. She had built everything from the ground up alone, obsessively, relentlessly. The people closest to her had become extensions of the company. Even Sam, maybe especially Sam. She looked over at Isla, still drawing in soft loops of color. "What are you working on?" Clara asked, her voice softer now. Isla pulled off one headphone and held up her paper. "It's our spaceship. We're fixing the engine so we can go home." Clara smiled, but her eyes misted just slightly. Ray turned back to the monitor. "I'm deploying a trace script. It won't alert them yet. But if they access one more file, we'll know exactly where they are." Clara nodded, then walked to the coffee table and sat beside Isla. Her knees didn't bend as easily in heels and fitted slacks, but she made herself small anyway. "Can I help?" she asked. Isla looked surprised, then delighted. "You can color the stars." Clara picked up a silver crayon and started shading beside Isla's streaks of purple and blue. The rhythm was calming, an unexpected escape from the chaos. A strange moment of peace inside a storm. "I used to draw when I was little," Clara said quietly. Isla grinned. "Do you still draw?" Clara hesitated. "No. I guess I forgot how." "You can remember," Isla said simply. "You just need the right paper." Ray looked over, watching Clara for a beat longer than he meant to. Something had shifted. She wasn't the CEO anymore in that moment. She was just a woman. Tired, real human. The screen pinged. Ray's head snapped back. "We have a hit." Clara stood instantly, where Ray pulled up the trace. A file path blinked. Then a location. Her face paled. "That's the executive server. That's Sam's access key." Ray's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Let me confirm. Could be spoofed." Clara's voice dropped. "No. If it's hers, I need to know." He ran a deeper check. "Metadata, device IDs, login timestamps. It's hers," he said quietly. Clara turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. "She's been with me since the beginning," she whispered. "She knew everything. She saw every late night, every fight, every win. I trusted her." Ray stood, voice steady. "Then she knows how to hurt you." Clara nodded slowly, as if the betrayal hadn't fully settled in yet. "She came into my office last night," she said. "Brought me tea. Warned me about you." Ray raised an eyebrow. "Of course she did. She told me not to trust the first person who showed me kindness." Ray's tone softened. "You didn't. You trusted the one who stayed when everything was falling." Clara looked at him. Really looked. And in that glance, something raw passed between them. Wounded trust, cautious hope, shared pain. "No pretense, no armor. I need time to think," she said. Ray nodded. "I'll keep digging." Quietly. She looked down at Isla's drawing, now filled with stars. "I'll be in the server room," Ray added, then lowered his voice. "But if you need someone who doesn't want anything from you, I'll be here." Clara didn't answer. She just watched him go. And when the door clicked shut behind him, she felt something unexpected rise in her chest. Not fear, not doubt, but the beginning of something else entirely. It was just after 9 when Clara stepped out of the building, the sky above Whitmore Tower still heavy with gray clouds. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the air remained damp, cool, expectant, like something was waiting to break. She walked without her usual urgency coat draped over one arm, her other hand holding on to the feeling she couldn't quite define. Something fragile had cracked open between her and Ray earlier, something she hadn't allowed in years. Kindness, trust, maybe even hope. But beneath that new light, a darker weight pulled at her. Sam. The access logs didn't lie. Clara had seen them with her own eyes. Her friend, her right hand, had been stealing from her. Not just files, but faith. And now every conversation, every glance, every silence between them felt different. Colored. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove aimlessly through Seattle's streets, the city lights blurring past her windows, like thoughts she didn't want to catch. By the time she pulled into her garage, she still had no answers. Just a growing ache in her chest that something precious had been slipping away long before she noticed. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Ray, the steadiness in his voice, the quiet way he looked at her without judgment, the way Isla had nestled against her side like it was the most natural thing in the world. She had felt seen. Not as Clara Whitmore, the billionaire tech founder. Just Clara. The next morning, Clara returned to the office earlier than usual. The building was mostly empty, save for the front desk and security staff. Her heels echoed in the hallway as she passed her own reflection in the glass walls, flawless suit hair pulled back, face composed. It was all armor, every piece. She found Ray in the tech floor lounge, Isla sitting beside him on a couch, with a bowl of cereal balanced in her lap, and her shoes kicked off under the table. Ray was reviewing logs on his laptop, eyes sharp even through the exhaustion lining his face. "You didn't go home?" Clara asked. Ray looked up, offering a tired but real smile. "Took a nap on the couch. Isla's been entertaining the night shift." Isla grinned, mouth full of cereal. "I showed them how to draw space unicorns." Clara's lips lifted. "I'm sure that boosted morale." Ray closed the laptop. Any word from Sam? Clara's smile vanished. She texted. Said she's taking a personal day. Ray raised an eyebrow. "Convenient." Clara nodded, then sat across from him, letting her posture relax just slightly. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Always. Do you think I should confront her now? Or wait?" Ray leaned back, folding his arms. "Depends. Do you want to catch her? Or do you want to understand why the question settled heavily between them?" "I don't know what I want," Clara admitted. Ray paused. "Then don't move yet. Not until you're sure, because once you do, everything changes." Clara looked at him for a long moment. "You speak like someone who's lived that." Ray's eyes didn't flinch. "I have. They fell into a quiet rhythm, Isla humming beside them, crayons scratching paper. Ray and Clara sharing sips of coffee like an unspoken truce. Outside, the city stirred the first threads of sunlight cutting through the clouds. Eventually, Clara said, "Come with me. To where I want to see where this all started." They drove across the city in silence. Past skyscrapers and crowded cafes, past the parts of Seattle Clara rarely visited anymore. Ray navigated without GPS, turning onto a quiet street lined with brick buildings and little yards in bloom. He parked in front of a modest two-story complex. "This is us," he said. Clara stepped out, heels clicking against the sidewalk. The building wasn't run down, but it had clearly lived a place where kids grew up, where real life unfolded in worn stairwells and flower boxes. Ray led her up a flight and into a small apartment filled with light and warmth. There were children's books on the shelves, a drawing taped to the fridge that said, "To Daddy the best fixer in the galaxy," a dish towel that read, "Coffee, coding, repeat." Everything smelled like cinnamon and lived in love. Clara walked slowly through the space, stopping at a window that overlooked the street. "It's beautiful. It's small," Ray said. "But it's yours." He nodded. Clara turned. "Why did you really stop trying to go back to tech?" Ray hesitated, then said quietly, "Because the last time I chased success, I lost more than I ever expected. I told myself it was for her, for Isla's mom, but the truth is, I was scared. Scared that if I chased something again, I'd lose Isla too." Clara's throat tightened. "You won't." Ray met her eyes. "And you? What about me? What are you afraid of losing?" Clara didn't answer right away. Then she walked over to the kitchen table, picked up a framed photo, Ray, his late wife, and a tiny Isla in a hospital bed. "I think I already lost it," she said softly. Ray stepped closer, his voice low. "Then maybe it's time you got something back." She looked at him. Really looked. His presence wasn't loud or demanding. It didn't press in. It simply filled the space where something had been missing. And for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to want. Closeness. She set the frame down. "I should go," she said. Ray nodded. "Thanks for coming." Clara made it to the door before pausing. "Ray, yeah, tomorrow morning. I'll be in the server room at 6. I'd like you there." He smiled gently. "I will be." As she stepped into the hallway, Clara felt her phone buzz in her coat pocket. A new email. Subject line, "Whitmore Systems confidential memo leak." Her stomach dropped. It had begun. The email subject line glared up from Clara's screen like a siren, "Whitmore Systems confidential memo leak." She tapped it open with a calm she didn't feel, her pulse already racing beneath the still surface she wore like a second skin. The memo wasn't just any memo. It was hers. A private document drafted weeks earlier outlining proposed cuts to overhead a post-acquisition plan, projections, and internal restructuring. It wasn't final. It wasn't even approved. But now, stripped of context and leaking onto business forums and media pages, it looked brutal, calculated, ruthless. It looked exactly like what her enemies always whispered she was. A corporate queen with a cold heart and a sharper blade. She stared at the screen in silence, every word a matchstick lighting under her name. Then she opened another tab and searched her company's name. The headlines were already rolling in. Whitmore's ruthless restructure revealed. Billionaire CEO prepares to cut staff, boost sale price. Inside the cold logic of Clara Whitmore. Her stomach twisted. Every carefully built piece of credibility, every silent sacrifice she'd made to keep the company upright, it was all being rewritten in real time by people who'd never sat at her desk, never carried what she carried. Her phone buzzed again. Sam. She let it ring, and fall into silence. She stood from her chair and looked out at the city. Seattle spread wide and glassy below her, soaked in rain again. The sky seemed to press down against the skyline, low and swollen with something unspoken. The door creaked open behind her. Ray. He stepped inside, holding 2 coffees. But when he saw her face, he stopped cold. "What happened?" he asked. Clara turned the screen toward him. He walked closer, read the headline, then the excerpt. "You're kidding," he muttered. "I wish." He exhaled slowly, setting the coffees down on the table beside them. "This is bad," she said. "Yeah. It's not just a leak, it's a character assassination." Ray glanced back at the memo again. "This was confidential. I didn't even send it to the board yet. Then it had to be pulled from your private folders." She nodded. "Encrypted?" "Of course." He stared at her, then leaned in, his voice low. "Clara, this wasn't just sabotage, this was personal." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "I know." She sat down, not gracefully this time, just dropped into the chair like the weight of the moment had stolen her spine. Her hands shook. She clasped them in her lap. "I thought I had time," she whispered. "Time to fix the breach. Time to quietly remove the threat. Time to take control before anything got out." Ray knelt beside her, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel his steadiness. "Clara." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "This leak. It's not the end." She blinked, and the smallest breath escaped her. "It sure feels like it." He shook his head. "It's not. You built this company from zero. And yeah, this hurts. It's going to hurt more, but don't let one leak define you." She held his gaze. "You think I can come back from this? I know you can." Silence stretched between them. Raw. Honest. Then a quiet knock. They both turned. Angela stepped in, eyes soft but alert. "Clara, you need to come to the conference room. The board's here." They saw the memo. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Of course they did. Angela hesitated. "You don't have to face them alone." Clara stood, straightened her blazer, checked her reflection in the window. Then she looked at Ray. "Will you wait for me?" Ray nodded. "Always." She stepped out without another word. The boardroom was already buzzing when she walked in. 7 people sat around the long glass table, each with a copy of the leaked memo printed in front of them like a weapon. No greetings, no pleasantries. Clara said Lawrence Drake, CFO and longtime skeptic. "We need clarity." "Happy to give it," she replied, taking her seat at the head of the table. "This memo, was it real?" "Yes." "And these cuts were never finalized," Clara interrupted. "They were projections, options. I had not signed off on any of them. I was still reviewing the long-term impact before any discussion with the board. But someone got their hands on it," said another. "And now the public thinks we're gutting the company." Clara nodded. "I know how it looks, and I'm taking full responsibility for the optics. But not the leak." She met his eyes. The leak was a breach. "And we're narrowing the source. I ask for your patience. What we need is stability." Lawrence cut in. "Investors are calling. Half of them think you've already sold us out." The room tensed. Clara stayed calm. "I'm not selling this company out. I'm protecting it. From whoever did this." There was a beat of silence. Angela stepped forward. "That's enough for now. If there are deeper concerns, I suggest scheduling a full review with legal and IT once Ms. Whitmore completes the trace." Lawrence looked displeased, but didn't argue. Clara stood. "Thank you for your time." As she left the boardroom, her heart pounded, but her face didn't show it. She returned to her office. Ray stood by the window, Isla asleep in a beanbag chair, crayon still in hand. "They tried to corner you," he said softly. Clara nodded. "They almost did." He stepped closer. "What now?" Clara looked down at Isla, then out at the skyline. "Now we prove I didn't build this on luck. I built it on truth. And I'm not done." She looked back at Ray. "You said the leak was personal. You still believe that I do?" Clara crossed her arms, her voice quiet but sharp. "Then we find out exactly who made it personal." Ray gave the smallest nod, and the storm inside her, cold, quiet, relentless, settled into something sharper. Resolve. Clara sat at the edge of her desk, the city behind her cast in a dim silver wash from a morning sky, still deciding whether to rain or hold back. Her office was silent, save for the soft breath of the HVAC and the slow, rhythmic scratch of Isla's crayon as she colored beside the window. Ray stood at her monitor, eyes narrowed at the firewall logs. He hadn't said a word in 5 minutes, and she could see the focus tightening in his shoulders. Whatever he was seeing, it wasn't good. Finally, he spoke. "The breach pattern changed last night." Clara straightened. Changed how they stopped trying to pull data. He turned to face her. "Now they're planting it." Her blood ran cold. "Planting." He nodded. Files, messages, backdated emails, carefully placed. Quiet. It's the kind of setup that builds a case before it explodes. Clara crossed the room in 3 strides, standing beside him. "So they're framing me, or trying to." He scrolled to a recent entry. "Look at this. A dummy email thread between you and a fake consultant. It makes it look like you were planning the layoffs for months. And leaking confidential IP to a competitor." She clenched her jaw, steadying her breath. "How fast can we shut it down? I'm already working on isolating the false entries. But if they've routed into the backup chain?" He looked at her, serious now. "It's going to take more than just cleanup. You're going to have to get ahead of this." Clara stepped back, the room feeling tighter now. The ceiling lower. "They're not just trying to take my company," she murmured. "They're trying to erase me." Ray nodded once. "Because it's easier to take something down when people stop believing in its foundation." She turned away, pressing a hand to her forehead. Her heart was racing, her mind already spinning who had access to the archive chain, who had the clearance to fake this so cleanly. Sam. The thought came before she could stop it. But why? And then, almost as if summoned, Angela appeared in the doorway, her presence gentle but alert. "There's someone here to see you." Clara blinked. "Who? Her name is Elise Garvey. She says she's a reporter, but she's not carrying press credentials. She said you'd want to hear what she has." Clara frowned. "A reporter?" Angela nodded slowly. "She's waiting in the downstairs cafe. Says she won't talk to anyone else." Ray met Clara's eyes. This might be a trap. Clara held his gaze. Or it might be our way out. She grabbed her coat and headed for the elevator. The cafe was nearly empty when Clara stepped in. Elise sat near the back, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes, a worn leather satchel at her side, and the posture of someone who'd spent years watching people lie for a living. She looked up when Clara approached. "You're earlier than I expected," Elise said. "I'm also out of patience," Clara replied. She sat. Elise opened the satchel, pulled out a slim envelope, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" Clara asked. "Proof, or part of it." Clara opened the envelope and unfolded a printed screenshot, an email exchange between Sam Boone and someone at Voltrix Ventures, a rival tech firm. It was recent, just 3 weeks ago. The message was short. "When Clara is exposed, I'll be ready. Make sure your end is too." Clara's stomach turned. She looked up slowly. Where did you get this? I've been tracking a series of anonymous tips tied to insider sabotage. It led me here. And I don't think you understand how close you are to being buried. Clara's voice was tight. So why warn me? Elise folded her hands. Because I've watched too many women get taken down for being strong in a world that only tolerates them when they're quiet. Clara blinked, taken aback by the directness. You're not my hero, Elise continued, but you don't deserve to be burned for someone else's betrayal. I can run this story, but only if you talk. And I mean everything, not just the leak. The truth about the company, the truth about you. Clara hesitated. That would start a war. No, Elise said. It would end one. Clara sat back. She hadn't shared her story with anyone outside her inner circle in years. And even there, the circle had become more of a triangle. She took a breath. Give me a day. 24 hours, Elise said. After that, this goes public whether you're ready or not. They stood. No handshake, no false promises. Back upstairs, Clara stepped off the elevator and headed straight for her office. Ray looked up when she entered. Well, he asked. She gave me this. Clara handed him the email. Ray scanned it, expression darkening. That's the smoking gun. Clara leaned against the table, arms crossed. Elise wants a full interview. She's giving me a day to decide. Ray was quiet for a moment. You're thinking about doing it, I have to. I'm being erased in slow motion, Ray. If I don't speak, someone else writes my ending. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, not of what was happening, but of what it might cost her. You don't owe the world your soul to save your name. Clara stepped closer, voice soft. I'm not doing this to save my name. I'm doing this to protect what I built, for everyone who believed in it. He searched her face, then nodded. Isla stirred in her seat, waking from a short nap. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, bleary but peaceful. Daddy, she murmured. I'm here, sweet pea. She reached out, and Ray lifted her gently, cradling her against his shoulder. Clara watched them. A quiet moment. A grounding one. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. Ray glanced over. What, choosing this life? Leaving behind everything you trained for? He looked down at Isla, who had already started to drift back to sleep. Not once, he said. She nodded slowly. I envy that, she whispered. Ray stepped toward her, still holding Isla. You can have that too. Maybe not the same way. But something real, something steady. Clara didn't answer. But she looked at him longer than she meant to. And in the silence that followed, she knew. She wasn't just fighting for her company anymore. She was fighting for herself. For a second chance at something more. The air in Clara's office was different, now tense, quiet, charged with the weight of unspoken decisions. The leaked memo had triggered something in the company's bloodstream. It moved through hallways and inboxes warped by whispers and speculation. Even those who had once praised her now walked a little faster when she passed their greetings, tight their eyes down. Clara could feel it. The shift. She stood by the window watching clouds roll in again, thick gray brooding. Seattle never offered clear skies when you needed them. Behind her, Ray sat quietly at the work table, Isla curled up beside him with a book half open in her lap. He had become her anchor in all this chaos. Not loud, not insistent, just there, unmoving, unshaken. But even anchors get tested. I've been thinking, Ray said, breaking the silence. Clara turned slightly. He didn't look up. Maybe I should back off. Her brows pulled. What he finally looked at her. This storm's getting worse. And now Elise has a story. The board's unsettled. Investors are calling for your head. I'm just a janitor who plugged a leak. Maybe it's time I step back before I do more harm than good. Clara crossed the room slowly until she was standing just in front of him. Her voice came low, measured. You think you're the harm? Ray held her gaze. I think people are looking for a scapegoat. And I've been close to you. Too close. You've saved this company more than once already, and it won't matter if the narrative turns. You know how this works, Clara. I'm not blind. She sat down beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Do you want to go? Ray was silent for a beat. No. She looked over at him. I just don't want to become another crack in your foundation. His words landed with more weight than she expected. Because they weren't just about optics, they were about care. About protecting her. You're not a crack, she said softly. You're the reason I'm still standing. Ray looked away, jaw tightening. He wasn't used to hearing things like that. Clara leaned forward. You said something the other day. That you stopped chasing success because you were afraid of losing Isla. He nodded slowly. I think I stopped chasing connection, she said, because I was afraid of losing control. Ray's eyes met hers again. I don't want to keep living like that, she whispered. A soft silence fell between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then Isla piped up from her seat, lifting her drawing. It's a lighthouse now, she said proudly, to help the spaceship find its way home. Clara blinked, then smiled gently. That's beautiful, Isla. Ray touched Isla's hair, then turned to Clara. You've got something stronger than control now. What's that people who care? Before she could respond, Angela stepped into the office, her expression unreadable. Sam's here. Clara stood. Send her in. Angela hesitated. She asked for privacy. Ray stood too. You sure you want that? Clara nodded. I need to know. Ray looked at her for a moment, then took Isla's hand. We'll be just outside. The door closed behind them. Moments later, Sam entered. She looked the same, sleek, polished, composed, but something behind her eyes had changed. There was a tension, a flicker of unease. Clara, she said, smooth as ever. Clara gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Sam did. A long silence stretched before Clara spoke. You leaked the memo. Sam didn't deny it. She just looked out the window, then back at Clara. You think I betrayed you? I don't think Clara said evenly. I know. Sam exhaled. It wasn't about the memo. Then what was it about you stopped trusting me a long time ago? Sam said quietly. You stopped letting me in. You made decisions behind closed doors, brought in new people, changed the direction without even asking. Clara stared at her. So you set me up. No, Sam snapped, then caught herself. I didn't set you up. I exposed what was already there. Clara's voice turned sharp. You doctored emails. You planted narratives. You manipulated the board. Sam's face twisted with something bitter. You were building a new version of this company without me. I could feel it. And after everything we built, after all the years, I was supposed to just fade quietly. Clara stood pacing to the window. You weren't fading. You were twisting the truth. I was surviving, Sam said. In your world, that's the only option. Clara turned eyes, glinting. You think this world was handed to me? I fought for every inch of it. I know Sam said, her voice soft now, and I admired that. I still do. But somewhere along the way, you forgot how to let people stay. You pushed and climbed and ruled, and the rest of us had to either keep up or get out of the way. Clara's throat tightened, because part of her knew some of that was true. I trusted you, Clara said, with everything. And I trusted you to see me, Sam whispered. But you stopped looking. A long silence followed, the kind that felt like a goodbye. Clara finally spoke. You need to resign. Sam nodded, slow and sad. I figured. And if this goes public, I won't protect you. I don't expect you to." They stood at the same time, two women who had once stood shoulder to shoulder, now separated by years of ambition, pain, and silence. As Sam walked to the door, she paused. "I didn't want to destroy you, Clara. I just wanted you to notice." Then she left. Clara stood in the quiet, her reflection in the glass, looking back at her, not the woman she'd been, or even the one she was trying to be, just someone in between. Ray returned a moment later. "Well," he asked. "She admitted it," Clara said. Ray exhaled. "What now? I don't know," she murmured. "But something has to change." He stepped closer, his presence grounding her again. Clara looked up at him. "I think I want to change." Ray's voice was soft. "Then start." She didn't respond, just stood there, feeling for the first time not lost, but ready. Clara leaned against the glass wall of her office, staring out at the hazy Seattle skyline. The rain had returned, soft, steady, unrelenting. It coated the streets like a secret, washing away footprints and softening sharp edges. But inside her there was no such softness. Not yet. Sam was gone. Officially resigned for personal reasons, but everyone knew. They always knew. It was in the way eyes flickered when Clara passed the silence that stretched too long in team meetings, the awkward pause before someone offered polite support. No one said it, but the air had changed. Clara had lost more than a colleague. She'd lost the illusion of control. Angela stood quietly at the door, tablet in hand. "You ready for the staff meeting?" Clara didn't move. "Are they?" Angela hesitated. "They need to hear from you." Clara exhaled through her nose. "That's not what I asked." Angela softened. "They're scared. But they're also listening." Clara turned. Still, Angela gave a small smile. "Not everyone runs at the first sign of smoke, Clara. Some wait to see if the fire turns to warmth." Clara closed her eyes for a beat, then nodded. "Let's go." The staff meeting was already in motion when she stepped into the open atrium. Rows of employees filled the seats, whispers darting like birds through branches as she walked to the front. No introduction. No script. She stood behind the mic fingers laced in front of her. Calm, measured, human. "Some of you are angry," she said. "Some of you are confused. Some of you don't know what to believe anymore." A few heads nodded, some faces tense, others open. Waiting. "I understand," she continued. "Because I'm all of those things too." That surprised them. She took a breath. A memo was leaked. A betrayal happened. And more than just information got lost, we lost trust. And for that, I take responsibility. Not because I approved the plan in that memo, I didn't. But because I let someone close to me turn it into something cruel. And I didn't stop it in time. The silence grew heavier. But no one looked away. I built this company because I believed in building something better, smarter, human. But somewhere along the way I stopped showing you that. Her voice dipped lower, steadier. I won't make that mistake again. And then, her eyes scanning the crowd, she saw him. Ray. Standing near the back, Isla perched on his hip, her arms around his neck. He hadn't needed to come. He wasn't staff, but he was there. Steady, like always. Clara's voice softened. "If we're going to move forward, we're going to do it together. No more shadows, no more whispers. If you want to talk, my door's open. If you want to be part of the solution, I'm listening." She stepped back. "Thank you." There was no applause, just silence. Then slowly Angela stood. Then one of the engineers. Then a team lead. One by one, people rose to their feet. Not clapping, not cheering, just standing, in quiet solidarity. Clara felt her throat tighten. After the meeting, she stepped outside for air. The sky had broken open, the rain falling harder now, soaking the stone beneath her feet. She didn't move, just let it hit her. Cold. Cleansing. Ray appeared beside her without a word. He offered an umbrella. She didn't take it. "I didn't think they'd stand," she said quietly. "You didn't have to," he replied. "You just had to show up." She looked over at him. "You always seem to know what to say." He smiled faintly. "That's because I say less." She laughed softly, then let it fade. "They don't trust me fully. Not yet." Ray nodded. "But they trust your direction. That's not the same. It's a start." She turned back to the rain. After a moment, she asked, "Do you think it's possible to fix this?" Ray was quiet. Then, "Yeah, I do." Clara exhaled slowly, watching the breath escape her lips in the cold. "Come with me tonight," she said suddenly. Ray blinked. "Where?" "To a benefit dinner. A bunch of board members and partners. I need a buffer. And someone honest." Ray tilted his head. "You want to bring a janitor to a billionaire fundraiser?" She met his eyes. "I want to bring the one person who didn't walk away." He studied her, something shifting behind his gaze. "All right," he said. That night, Clara arrived at the event earlier than usual, her black dress sleek but understated. The ballroom sparkled chandeliers, dripping light silver cutlery, gleaming laughter soft and practiced. She felt none of it. Ray entered just after wearing a clean black suit and a tie that didn't quite sit right, too stiff, too formal for someone who lived in hoodies and old flannel. But when their eyes met, he smiled, and somehow the entire room softened. They found their table tucked near the middle. Clara greeted a few donors with brief, polite smiles, but her attention kept drifting back to Ray. The way he took it all in without shrinking. The way Isla's small drawing of a space unicorn was folded neatly in his jacket pocket, peeking out like a secret. Midway through dinner, one of the board members approached Sandra Lynn, sharp as ever. "Clara," she said, "lovely speech today. Brave." Clara nodded. "Thank you." "And who's this?" Sandra asked, eyes flicking to Ray. Clara didn't flinch. "This is Ray Harmon, a critical part of our recovery effort." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "Well then, I suppose good help really is hard to find?" Clara smiled tightly. "He's more than help." Sandra didn't respond, just nodded and drifted away. Ray watched her go. "I don't think she liked me. She doesn't like anyone." He smirked. Comforting. Later that evening, as the ballroom began to empty and the chatter died down, Clara and Ray stepped outside into the crisp air. The valet was still retrieving cars. The street shimmered with fresh rain. Clara turned to him. "Thank you. For coming." Ray shrugged. "I'm still not sure why I was here. Because I needed someone real." He looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. "And if I'm too real for this world of yours," she took a breath, "then maybe it's time I make space for something more real." The words hung in the air between them. Unsaid things pressing in. And Clara, for the first time in years, didn't pull away from them. She just stood there, right in the middle of the possibility. The next morning, Clara woke to the rare silence of her phone. No pings, no buzz, no urgent calls clawing for her attention before she could open her eyes. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the city beyond her apartment windows. It felt foreign. Like the world had hit pause just long enough to let her breathe. But habit was stronger than peace. She reached for her phone anyway, and found a single notification: waiting interview confirmed with Elise Garvey. 3:00 p.m. The choice she'd made yesterday now stared her in the face. Clara got up dressed and stared at her reflection for a long time. The woman looking back was composed but not cold. Her face wasn't flawless, but it held strength in its lines. In the past, she'd learned to weaponize that expression. Today, she wanted it to mean something else. Truth, honesty, and maybe a little softness. She arrived at the office before Ray. Angela met her at the elevator holding a tablet and a cup of coffee. "Interview's still on?" Angela asked, passing her the drink. Clara nodded. "I'll do it, but on my terms." Angela didn't hide her surprise. "You're not just giving them a soundbite?" "No." Clara walked toward her office. "If I'm going to be honest, I have to start at the beginning." Inside her desk was clear, her space unusually quiet. The storm, it seemed, had taken a breath. An hour later, Ray walked in with Isla holding his hand and a juice box in the other. Isla ran to her usual corner, pulling out a stack of paper and crayons. Ray crossed to Clara, his eyes scanning hers, like he could read whatever storm brewed behind them. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm about to give a reporter full access to my skeletons," she replied. Ray leaned against the desk. "So, a regular Tuesday then." She laughed softly, more grateful than she expected for the joke. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, quieter now. Clara hesitated. "No, but I'm done hiding," Ray nodded. "Then I'll be here." She looked at him. "I know." By 2:45, Elise had arrived. Angela led her to a small glass meeting room tucked at the end of the floor. It was quiet, intimate, no distractions. Clara didn't want spectacle, just clarity. Elise sat with her recorder already out, legal pad in hand, pen poised. "You're really going through with this?" she asked as Clara took her seat. "I am." Elise pressed record. "All right then, let's begin." The first few questions were measured predictable. Company founding, early risks, first major success. Clara answered them with calm precision. Her voice steady, her posture proud. But then Elise shifted. "You were raised in Tacoma, right?" she asked. Clara nodded. "Your parents ran a small appliance store." "Yes. My mother handled the front. My father did repairs in the back. So you didn't come from wealth." Clara tilted her head slightly. "Is that surprising?" Elise smiled faintly. "To some, yes." Clara leaned forward. "I didn't inherit any of this. I built it. But it came with a cost." Which was, Clara was quiet. "Then I lost people. I made decisions that hurt relationships. I stopped asking for help because I was too afraid it would be seen as weakness." Elise scribbled something, then asked, "Would you say that's what happened with Sam Boone?" Clara inhaled sharply. "Yes." "I trusted her, but I stopped making room for her voice. She betrayed me, but I also stopped listening." That hung in the air for a moment. "Do you blame her?" "I blame her actions," Clara said carefully. "But I don't hate her." Elise sat back. And Ray Harmon Clara blinked. "What about him? He's become a public figure in this, whether he likes it or not. There's buzz. People are talking. Some say the janitor saved the billionaire. Others say it's more than that." Clara glanced toward her office, where Isla was still drawing quietly. She looked back at Elise. "Ray didn't just save the company," she said softly. "He reminded me who I am. He reminded me what matters." Elise paused, pen still. "Is it romantic?" she asked. Clara considered that for a long moment. "I don't know yet," she said. "But it's real. And that's more than I've had in a long time." The interview ended after another 15 minutes with Elise offering a quiet nod of respect as she packed her recorder away. "Thank you," she said. Most CEOs would have spun a clean narrative. Clara met her eyes. "I'm done with clean." Later that evening, Clara sat alone in her office, lights low, Isla asleep on the couch, wrapped in Ray's old flannel. She scrolled through her inbox, heart thudding harder than she wanted to admit. And then it came. An alert. Exclusive Clara Whitmore breaks her silence. I stopped asking for help. The article was live. Elise had posted it immediately. Clara clicked it open expecting the worst. But it wasn't brutal. It was raw. It was real. She read through the quotes, the context, the commentary, and somewhere in the middle her hands stopped shaking. Ray stepped in behind her holding a blanket. "It's up," he asked. She nodded. She told the truth. Ray wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her. "She told your truth," he said gently. "There's a difference." Clara looked at him, eyes softer now. She asked if we were something she said. Ray's brow rose. "And what did you say?" Clara smiled faintly. "I said, I don't know yet." Ray nodded, not pressing. "But I'd like to find out," she added. This time he smiled too, and in the quiet that followed, something unspoken settled between them. Not an answer, but the start of one. The next morning Clara arrived at the office before the sun had even lifted the fog off the sound. Her heels echoed down the marble hallway, but today the sound didn't feel so sharp. It felt grounding. Angela met her at the door to the boardroom, brows knit tablet clutched tight to her chest. "They moved the vote up," she whispered. "Today. Noon." Clara froze. "How many votes do I have?" Angela hesitated. 4 out of 11. Clara closed her eyes. The numbers weren't on her side. Not yet. But Angela added, lowering her voice. "The article changed things. A few members have gone quiet. They're waiting to see how you show up." Clara gave a tight nod. "Then I'll show up." She turned down the hallway and found Ray in the lounge Isla, quietly coloring beside him. The little girl looked up and smiled. "I made a new planet," she said, holding up a blue and green swirl. Ray looked at Clara, sensing the shift in her energy. "They moved the vote," she said. He stood slowly. "You ready?" Clara gave him a look halfway between exhausted and determined. "No, but I'm going anyway." Ray didn't smile. He just reached into his coat pocket and handed her something, a folded piece of paper. "What's this? She made it this morning," he said. "Said it was for you." Clara unfolded it. It was a drawing, a stick figure version of Clara standing on a cliff wind in her hair arms open. Above her was a tiny sun with a smiling face. Underneath, in careful crayon letters, "You can do brave things." Clara stared at it for a long moment. Then she folded it carefully and slid it into her blazer pocket. She walked into the boardroom just before noon. 11 members sat at the polished table faces, guarded expressions unreadable. "Before we vote," Clara said, her voice, "even I want to say one thing." Some of them shifted. Some didn't look up. But no one interrupted. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I've been hard to reach, hard to work with." I stopped listening. I focused so much on the structure that I forgot the people holding it up. Her eyes met Sandra Lynn's. "But I haven't stopped fighting for this company. Not for a second. And I won't. Even if you vote me out, I'll keep fighting because what we've built matters." A beat of silence. Then Clara reached into her pocket and held up Isla's drawing. "This was given to me by someone who doesn't know a thing about our stock or our patents or our performance. But she knows what it means to believe in someone." She placed the drawing on the table in plain view. "I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm asking for a chance. One last one." Then she sat. Sandra spoke first. "Let's vote." It went around the table. 1 yes, 2 no's, another yes, then 2 abstains. Her heart pounded as the numbers climbed. It came to Sandra, the final vote. She looked at Clara, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then she glanced down at the crayon drawing on the table. Her voice was soft but clear. "Yes." Clara blinked. She hadn't braced for that. She hadn't expected it. 7 to 4. She stayed. As the room began to shift, people rising, papers gathering, Clara sat still, barely breathing. Ray appeared in the doorway, catching her eye. She walked to him slowly, the tension in her spine finally beginning to unwind. "You stayed," he said quietly. "I did," she replied. She looked up at him. And this time she smiled, not because she had won, but because she had come back to life. The air outside the boardroom felt different, lighter somehow. Clara stepped into it slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. Behind her, the echoes of conversation faded, while ahead the hallway stretched long and quiet. She hadn't noticed before how much the space reflected her own mind, once rigid and polished, now quietly evolving. Ray waited by the elevators, Isla tucked in one arm, her thumb resting gently in her mouth, eyes heavy with sleep. "You did it," he said. Clara gave a small nod, still absorbing the weight of it. "I'm not sure what I did, but I'm still here." Ray's smile was soft. "That counts." They rode down together in silence. The elevator hummed around them, the lights above flickering just slightly as the floors ticked by. Clara stared at her reflection in the chrome panel. She looked tired. Yes, but also open. Like something had cracked just enough to let air in. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and glistening like the city had been freshly washed. Ray shifted Isla to his other shoulder. "You should celebrate." Clara gave him a sideways look. "Celebrate what? That I barely survived a vote?" "No," he said. "That you didn't run." She was quiet a moment. Then, "Do you think that's enough?" Ray turned fully to her. "It's more than most people ever do." They stopped walking. Just stood there for a second. Clara's eyes searched his face, not for reassurance, but for grounding. And she always seemed to find it in him. "You know," she said slowly, "before you came into my life, I didn't realize how lonely I was, even surrounded by people." Ray nodded. "Sometimes being seen is the scariest thing, and the most necessary." He looked down at Isla, now fully asleep. "I've spent years staying invisible. It felt safer, easier." Clara tilted her head. And now he looked at her. Really looked. "I'm tired of hiding too." They stood in the soft quiet of that moment, the world moving around them but not quite touching them. Something unspoken passed between them, an invitation, not a declaration. A beginning. Later that night, Clara found herself alone in her apartment, the lights low, the city stretching out below her. She pulled out the crayon drawing Isla had given her and pinned it gently on the fridge. It looked oddly perfect there, nestled between elegant photos and sleek magnets. "You can do brave things." She stared at it for a long time, then opened her laptop and began to write, not emails, not memos, but something different. A letter. Not addressed to anyone in particular, but written for the part of herself that had been too quiet for too long. She wrote about fear, about failure, about the hollow victories that came with building empires and the real ones that came with building trust. She wrote about Isla's laugh and Ray's steady silences, about the way the city looked different when you had someone to walk beside you. And when she finished, she didn't read it back. She just saved it, then closed the laptop. The next day brought a strange calm to the office. Employees passed her with nods that felt warmer, more human. Someone had left a sticky note on her desk that read, "Thank you for staying." No name. Just that. Angela appeared in the doorway mid-morning. "You have a visitor." Clara looked up. "Who?" Angela smiled. "Your janitor. Though he brought coffee this time, not a mop." Ray stepped in holding 2 cups. "Thought you might need fuel." Clara took one, smiling. "You always seem to know." He shrugged. "Perks of watching quietly." They sat together for a moment, not saying much, just sipping coffee, listening to the soft hum of the building. Clara set her cup down. I don't know where this is going. Ray didn't flinch. That's okay. She looked at him, brows drawn slightly. It is. He met her gaze. As long as we're walking into it, not running from it. She sat back, studying him. You know you've changed everything. Ray's voice was low. So have you. And in the stillness that followed, neither of them needed to say more. They already knew. Clara walked into the garden just behind the company building, a small, often forgotten patch of greenery, tucked between concrete walls and glass. It had started as a place to escape the noise she used to come here when she needed to think when deals were on the brink or people had disappointed her. But today, it felt different. Angela was already there, kneeling beside a planter box with a tiny sign stuck in the soil, Angela's Garden, established 2007. The older woman looked up as Clara approached her gloves, dusty, her gray curls tucked into a loose bun. I thought you'd be buried in reports, Angela said. I needed air, Clara replied. And you? Angela chuckled. That's rare. You used to only need numbers and silence. Clara stepped closer, her eyes softening. People change. Angela stood and pulled off her gloves, patting her hands clean. Not all of them do. But you did. I've seen it. Clara folded her arms, then lowered her gaze. There's something I need to ask you. Angela tilted her head. What's that? Why did you stay? Clara asked quietly. When Sam left, when the board turned on me. When I was too closed off to hear you. Why didn't you go too? Angela was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to the bench and sat motioning for Clara to join her. I stayed because I remember where you started, she said gently. That girl who brought her own lunch in a brown paper bag, who didn't own anything designer, who worked till midnight and paid for coffee with coins from her glove box. I remember her. Clara swallowed her chest tight. I stayed because I saw her in you again, Angela continued. After all the noise and armor and press, there she was, scared but trying. Clara's voice cracked. I thought I had to be someone else to keep all of this alive. Angela reached over and took her hand. You only had to be you. Silence fell between them, thick but not heavy, the kind that makes space, not tension. After a moment, Clara asked, What if I lose it again? Angela squeezed her hand. Then you'll rebuild. But this time you won't be alone. Clara looked down at their joined hands, then smiled through the sting behind her eyes. I think I finally believe that. Later that afternoon, Clara found herself in the break room of all places. Ray was at the vending machine arguing with it like it had a personal grudge against him. I hit C6. It gave me trail mix. Who chooses trail mix on purpose? Clara leaned against the doorframe. Maybe the machine knows your cholesterol. He turned mock offended. At 2, Clara. She laughed, stepping forward and grabbing a granola bar instead. How's Isla? She asked. She's building a pillow fort in the janitor's closet. I told her it's a secret kingdom. She made me swear allegiance before I left. Clara smiled, then grew quieter. Ray, she said, can I ask you something a little complicated? He met her eyes, sensing the shift in tone. Always. Do you ever think about what this is? She asked, motioning between them. Ray didn't look away. All the time. And he took a slow breath. I think it's honest. And maybe that's rare enough to be worth holding on to. Clara looked down at her hands, twisting the wrapper without opening it. I've spent so long not needing anyone I forgot what it feels like to want someone. Ray stepped closer, his voice quieter now. Wanting isn't weakness, Clara. Her eyes met his. But what if I ruin it? Then we fix it, he said simply. Together. She looked at him. Really looked, and something inside her steadied. Dinner, she said. Tonight, my place. No staff, no plans, just us. Ray grinned. And trail mix. She rolled her eyes. Only if the vending machine insists. That evening, as Clara prepared her kitchen, still awkward with simple things like chopping onions and setting a casual table, she caught herself humming. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. At exactly 6, there was a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Ray holding a bottle of wine in one hand, Isla's favorite coloring book in the other. Figured we might need backup, he said. Clara stepped aside, her heart lighter than it had been in years. And as they crossed the threshold, something unspoken followed them in. Not just hope, but something much closer to home. Clara hadn't cooked a full dinner in over a decade. Her kitchen had been more for show than use: shiny appliances, untouched pots, and a fridge that held more sparkling water than food. But tonight the countertops were cluttered with ingredients recipe cards Angela had handwritten years ago, and 2 mismatched wine glasses. She stirred the sauce carefully, brow furrowed in concentration, then turned down the heat just as the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, Ray stood there, coat open, cheeks pink from the cold, and a quiet smile on his face. He held a simple bouquet of sunflowers already slightly wine-tossed. "They're not fancy," he said, handing them over. "But they felt like you?" Clara blinked, surprised. "Me bright, a little wild, and hard to ignore." Her lips curved as she took them. "That's unexpectedly poetic for a janitor." "I contain multitudes," he replied with a grin. Clara placed the flowers in a tall glass and motioned for him to come in. Isla was already on the floor, spreading out her coloring books like a queen, laying claim to her kingdom. Dinner was a little messy. The pasta slightly overcooked, the sauce richer than it should have been, but none of it mattered. They sat around the small table with real conversation, real laughter, no polish, no performance. Midway through the meal, Ray set his fork down and looked at her across the candle-lit table. "This place doesn't look like the woman in Forbes." Clara leaned back, her fingers curled around her wine glass. Maybe she was just a costume. Ray studied her. "Then who's sitting here now?" Clara didn't answer right away. Her gaze dropped to the flicker of the candle between them. "I think I'm still figuring that out," she said softly. "But she feels more honest than the woman in that magazine." Ray nodded. "Honest suits you." Clara's chest tightened a little. "You always see straight through me," he smiled. "I'm not trying to. It just happens." The conversation slowed, drifting into softer territory, Isla's latest obsession with Space Ray's discovery of a half-broken piano in the storage room he was trying to fix. Clara's memories of the first investor pitch she ever gave, in a borrowed blazer and shoes that pinched. Eventually, Isla curled up on the couch and fell asleep, with her head on a pillow that was too big for her, a crayon still in her hand. Ray glanced at her and stood slowly moving toward the girl with practiced ease. He draped Clara's cashmere throw over her small form and knelt down to kiss her forehead. Clara watched something catching in her throat. "She's lucky to have you," she said quietly. Ray looked over, his expression unreadable. "Some days I think she saved me more than I saved her." He walked back to the table but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned on the edge of the chair and looked at Clara with a different kind of weight in his eyes. "I need to ask you something." Clara sat up straighter. "Of course. Whatever it is between us. It feels like something I wasn't expecting. And I need to know, if we keep going down this road, are you ready to let someone in?" Clara held his gaze. Her pulse picked up, but not out of fear. Out of truth. "I'm not ready," she said honestly. "But I want to be." Ray didn't flinch. He stepped closer slowly and rested a hand on the table. That's enough for me. The silence that followed was different this time, electric, full of everything unsaid. She stood, met him halfway. And though there was no kiss, no grand gesture, the way their eyes locked said everything. This wasn't casual. It wasn't temporary. It was two people, both bruised, both healing, finally letting the other see all the cracks. And realizing the cracks didn't break them. They made room for the light. It had been exactly 1 year since the board vote. Clara stood barefoot on the rooftop of the building that once felt like a kingdom balanced on a knife's edge. The early spring air was crisp, and the wind carried the scent of city life below coffee blossoms, the faint tang of warm pavement after morning rain. But up here it was quiet, peaceful. She gazed out at the skyline, her hands wrapped around a mug Ray had gifted her. It had Isla's crayon drawing printed on it now. "You can do brave things," written in a child's looping script beneath a stick figure version of Clara, with wild brown hair and a superhero cape. She smiled every time she saw it. Behind her, the door creaked open. Ray stepped out a little breathless, balancing a small tray with toast fruit and 2 more mugs. "You're not supposed to be up yet," he said, mock scolding. "I was too awake to stay in bed." He set the tray down and joined her at the railing shoulder to shoulder. Below, the city moved on, unaware of how much life had shifted in this single building within a single heart. "I was thinking," Clara said softly, "about the day we met." Ray laughed quietly. "You mean when I nearly knocked you over in the lobby?" Clara nodded. "And you didn't say a word. You just picked up your bucket and disappeared." He looked at her sideways. "Well, I was pretty sure I was about to get fired." Clara smiled. "And instead, you got... what exactly?" Ray grew quiet, then answered, "A reason to hope again." They fell into a silence that didn't need filling. Downstairs, the company was different now. The top floor no longer felt like a fortress. It was open, transparent. There were new leaders, new ideas, and new faces. The janitor's closet had been converted into a cozy nook for Isla and any employee who needed a breather filled with blankets and coloring books and sunlight. And Clara. She no longer walked the halls like a ghost. She showed up. Messy, present, human. Angela was retiring soon. They had talked about it the night before, how change could feel like loss and still be the right thing. Clara had offered to name the new mentorship program after her. "I don't need a plaque," Angela had said. "Just promise me you'll keep listening." "I will," Clara had replied. "I promise." Now Ray looked over at her, eyes soft. "Do you miss the old way Clara thought about that? The speed, the silence, the control?" "No," she said. "Because I never felt like I belonged in it. I was building something I didn't want to live inside." Ray's hand found hers. "You built something new?" She squeezed his fingers. "We did." A breeze lifted a strand of her hair, and he tucked it gently behind her ear. "Do you think people like us," she asked, "ever really find peace?" He looked at her thoughtful. "I don't think peace is a destination. What is it then? A choice. One you make again and again." Clara leaned into him. "I want to keep choosing it. Then we will." Later that day, Clara stood before the entire company during the quarterly meeting. The glass auditorium buzzed with energy, and this time she didn't wear a power suit or speak from behind a podium. She stood center stage in soft gray slacks and a blouse Isla had said made her look like a nice cloud. "I used to think power was something you held tightly," she began. "Something you earned with sweat and sleepless nights, and once you had it, you never let go." She paused. "But I learned that real power is the opposite. It's what you give away, what you build in others, what you choose to share. The room was still. Even the coffee machines had fallen quiet. I stand here not because I fought to stay, but because people fought for me when I had nothing left to offer. And that taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. She looked down at the first row where Ray sat beside Isla, who was proudly wearing her Vice President of Snacks badge. The people who matter most in your life will see you when you can't see yourself. The applause began slowly, gentle at first, then rising like a wave. Clara didn't beam. She didn't pose. She just let it happen. Let it in. That night they walked home together, Clara, Ray, and Isla. They stopped for ice cream, even though dinner hadn't happened yet. Isla smeared chocolate on her cheek and declared herself president of dessert, and no one argued. Back at Clara's apartment, they curled up on the couch together. The city outside glittered like 1,000 tiny hopes flickering on. Ray dozed with Isla curled into his side, her hand wrapped tightly around his thumb. Clara watched them for a long time, her heart full in ways she hadn't known were possible. Then she pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app, and typed one simple line. Sometimes the person who saves your life doesn't look like a hero. They look like a janitor with tired eyes, and a daughter who draws with crayons. And sometimes losing everything is exactly what you needed to find the life you were meant to live. She hit save, closed her eyes, and breathed in the quiet beauty of finally coming home.